The Screwtape Letters by C.S. Lewis, Part 2. My dear Wormwood, the amateurish suggestions in your last letter warn me that it is high time for me to write to you fully on the painful subject of prayer. You might have spared the comment that my advice about his prayers for his mother proved singularly unfortunate. That is not the sort of thing that a nephew should write to his uncle, nor a junior tempter to the undersecretary of a department. It also reveals an unpleasant desire to shift responsibility. You must learn to pay for your own blunders. The best thing there is possible is to keep the patient from a serious intention of praying altogether. When the patient is an adult recently reconverted to the enemy's party, like your man, this is best done by encouraging him to remember, or to think he remembers, the parrot-like nature of his prayers in childhood. In reaction against that, he may be persuaded to aim at something entirely spontaneous, inward, informal, and unregularized, and that this will actually mean to a beginner will be an effort to produce in himself a vaguely devotional mood in which real concentration of will and intelligence have no part. One of their poets, Coleridge, has recorded that he did not pray with moving lips or bended knees, but merely composed his spirit to love and indulged a sense of supplication. That is exactly the sort of prayer we want, and since it bears a superficial resemblance to the prayer of silence as practiced by those who are very far advanced in the enemy's service, clever and lazy patients can be taken in by it for quite a long time. At the very least, they can be persuaded that the bodily position makes no difference to their prayers, for they constantly forget what you must always remember, that they are animals and that whatever their bodies do affect their souls. It is funny how mortals always picture us as putting things in their minds. In reality, our best work is done by keeping things out. If this fails, you must fall back on a subtler misdirection of his intentions. Whenever they are attending to the enemy himself, we are defeated. But there are ways of preventing them from doing so. The simplest is to turn their gaze away from him towards themselves. Keep them watching their own minds and trying to produce feelings that their actions of their own wills. When they meant to ask him for charity, let them instead trying to manufacture charitable feelings for themselves and not notice that this is what they are doing. When they meant to pray for courage, let them really be trying to feel brave. When they say they are praying for forgiveness, let them be trying to feel forgiven. Teach them to estimate the value of each prayer by their success in producing the desired feeling, and never let them suspect how much success or failure of that kind depends on whether they are well or ill, fresh or tired at that moment. But of course the enemy will not meantime be idle. Whenever there is prayer, there is danger of his own immediate action. We are cynically indifferent to the dignitary of his position, and ours as pure spirits, and to human animals on their knees. He pours himself knowledge in a quite shameless fashion. But even if he defeats your first attempt at misdirection, we have a subtler weapon. The humans do not start from their direct perception of him, which we unhappily cannot avoid. They have never known the ghastly luminosity, that stabbing and searing glare which makes the background of permanent pain in our lives. If you look into your patient's mind and he is praying, you will not find that. If you examine the object of which he is attending, you will find that it is a composite object containing many quite ridiculous ingredients. There will be images derived from pictures of the enemy, as he appeared during the discreditable episode known as the Incarnation. There will be vulgar, perhaps quite savage and puerile images associated with the other two persons. There will even be some of his own reverence and of bodily sensations accompanying it, objectified and attributed to the object revered. I have known cases where what the patient called his God was actually located up to the left at the corner of the bedroom ceiling, or inside his own head, or in a crucifix on the wall. But whatever the nature of the composite object, you must keep him praying to it, to the thing that he has made, not to the person who has made him. You may even encourage him to attach great importance to the correction and improvement of his composite object, and to keeping it steadfastly before his imagination during the whole prayer. For if he ever comes to make the distinction, if ever he consciously directs his prayers, not to what I think thou art, but to what thou art knowest thyself to be, our situation is, for the moment, desperate. Once all of his thoughts and images have been flung aside, or, if retained with a full recognition of their merely subjective nature, and the man trusts himself to the complete, real, external, invisible presence, there with him in the room, and never knowable by him as he is known by it, why, then it is that the incalculable may occur. In avoiding this situation, this real nakedness in the soul of prayer, you will be helped by the fact that the humans themselves do not desire it as much as they suppose. There is such a thing as getting more than they bargained for. Your affectionate uncle, Screwtape. My dear Wormwood, it is a little bit disappointing to expect a detailed report on your work and to receive instead such a vague rhapsody as your last letter. You say you are delirious with joy because the European humans have started another of their wars. I see very well what has happened to you. You are not delirious. You are only drunk. Reading between the lines in your very unbalanced account of your patient's sleepless night, I can reconstruct your state of mind fairly accurately. For the first time in your career, you have tasted the wine, which is the reward of all of our labors, the anguish and bewilderment of a human soul, and it has gone to your head. I can hardly blame you. I do not expect old heads on young shoulders. Did your patient respond to some of your terror pictures of the future? Did your work in some good self-pitying glances at the happy past? Some fine thrills in the pit of your stomach were there? You played your violin prettily, didn't you? Well, it all very natural. But do remember, Wormwood, that duty comes before pleasure. If at any present self-indulgence on your part leads to the ultimate loss of the prey, you will not be left eternally thirsting for that draught of which you are now so much enjoying your first sip. If, on the other hand, by steady and cool-headed application, here and now, you can finally secure his soul, he will then be yours forever, a brim-full, living chalice of despair and horror and astonishment, which you can raise to your lips as often as you please. You do not allow any temporary excitement to distract you from the real business of undermining faith and preventing the formation of virtues. Give me without fail in your next letter a full account of all your patients' reactions to the war, so that we can consider whether you are likely to do more good by making him an extreme patriot or an ardent pacifist. There are all sorts of possibilities. In the meantime, I must warn you, do not you to hope too much for the war. Of course a war is entertaining. An intermediate fear and suffering of the humans is a legitimate and pleasing refreshment for a myriad of toiling workers. But what permanent good does it do us unless we make use of it for bringing souls to our Father below? When I see the temporal suffering of humans who finally accept us, I feel as if I had been allowed to taste the first course of a rich banquet and then denied the rest. It is worse than not to have tasted it at all. The enemies, true to his barbarous methods of warfare, allow us to see the short misery of his favorites only to tantalize and torment us, to mock the increased hunger which during this present phase of the great conflict. His blockade is immediately imposing. Let us therefore think rather not to use than how to enjoy this European war. For it has certain tendencies inherent in it which are, in themselves, by no means in our favor. We may hope for a good deal of cruelty and unchastity, but if we are not careful, we shall see thousands turning in his tribulation to the enemy, while tens of thousands who do not go to so far as that will nevertheless have their attention diverted from themselves to values and causes which they believe to be higher than the self. I know that the enemy disapproves many of these causes, but that is where he is so unfair. He often makes prizes of humans who have given their lives for causes. He thinks bad on the monstrosity sophistical ground that the humans thought them good and were following the best they knew. Consider, too, what undesirable deaths often in wartime. Men are killed in places where they knew they might be killed, and to which they go, if they are at all of the enemy's party prepared. How much better for us if all humans died in costly nursing homes amid doctors who lie, nurses who lie, friends who lie, as we have trained them, promising life to the dying, encouraging the belief that sickness excuses every indulgence, and even if our workers know their job, withholding all suggestions of a priest lest it should betray to the sick man his true condition. And how disastrous for us is the continual remembrance of death, which war enforces. One of our best weapons, contented worldliness, is rendered useless. In wartime, not even a human can believe that he is going to live forever. I know that Screwtape and others have seen in wars a great opportunity to attacks on faith, but I think the view was exaggerated. The enemy's human partisans have all been plainly told by him that suffering is an essential part of what he calls redemption, so that faith which is destroyed by the war or a pestilence cannot really have been worth the trouble of destroying. I am speaking now of diffusing suffering over a long period, such as a war will produce. Of course, at the premise moment of terror, bereavement, or physical pain, you may catch your man when his reason is temporarily suspended. But even then, if he applies the enemy's headquarters, I have found that the post is nearly always defended. Your affectionate uncle, Screwtape. Dear Wormwood, I am delighted to hear that your patient's age and profession make it possible, but by no means certain that he will be called up for military service. We want him to be in the maximum uncertainty, so that his mind will be filled with contrary pictures of the future, every one of those which arouse hope and fear. There is nothing like suspense and anxiety for barricading a human's mind against the enemy. He wants men to be concerned with that they do. Our business is to keep them thinking about what will happen to them. Your patient will, of course, have picked up the notion that he must submit with patience to the enemy's will. What the enemy means by this is primarily that he should accept with patience and tribulation, which has actually been dealt out to him, the present anxiety and suspense. It is about this that he is to say, "The will be done," and for the daily task of bearing this, that the daily bread will be provided. It is your business to see that the patient never thinks of the present fear as his appointed cross, but only of the things he is afraid of. Let him regard them as his crosses. Let him forget that, since they are incompatible, they cannot all happen to him, and let him try to practice fortitude and patience to all them in advance. For real resignation, at the same moment, to a dozen different and hypothetical fates, is almost impossible, and the enemy does not greatly assist those who are trying to attain it. Resignation to present and actual suffering, even when the suffering consists of fear, is actually helped by this direction action. An important spiritual law is here involved. I have explained that you can weaken his prayers by diverting his attention from the enemy himself to his other states of mind about the enemy. On the other hand, fear becomes easier to master when the patient's mind is diverted from the thing feared to the fear itself, considered as a present and desirable state of his own mind, and when he regards that fear as pointed across, he will inevitably think of it as a statue of mind. One can therefore formulate the general rule in all activities of mind which favor our cause. Encourage the patient to be unself-conscious and to concentrate on the object, but in all activities favorable to the enemy, bend his mind back on himself. Let an insult or a woman's body so fix his attention outward that he does not reflect, "I am now entering into the state called anger," or in a state called lust. Contrariwise, let the reflection, "My feelings are now growing more devout or more charitable," so fix his attention inward that he no longer looks beyond himself to see our enemy or his own neighbors. As regards his more general attitude to the war, you must not rely too much on those feelings of hatred which the humans are so fond of discussing in Christian or anti-Christian periodicals. In his anguish, the patient can, of course, be encouraged to revenge himself by some vindictive feelings directed toward the German leaders, and that is good so far as it goes. But it is usually a sort of melodramatic or mythical hatred directed against imaginary scapegoats. He has never met these people in real life. They are lay figures modeled on what he gets from newspapers. The results of such fanciful hatred are often most disappointing, and of all humans, the English are in this respect the most deplorable milksops. They are creatures of that miserable sort who loudly proclaim that torture is too good for their enemies, and then give tea and cigarettes to the first wounded German pilot who turn up on the back door. Do what you will, there is going to be some benevolence, and as well as some malice in your patient's soul. The great thing is to direct the malice to his immediate neighbors, whom he meets every day, and to thrust his benevolence out to the remote circumference, to people he does not know. The malice thus becomes wholly real, and the benevolence largely imaginary. There is no good at all in inflaming his hatred of Germans if, at this same time, a pernicious habit of charity is growing up between him and his mother, his employer, and the man he meets in the train. Think of your man as a series of concentric circles. He is being the innermost, his intellect coming next, and finally his fantasy. You can hardly hope at once to exclude from all the circles everything that smells of the enemy, but you must keep on shoving all the virtues outwards until they are finally located in the circle of fantasy, and all the desirable qualities inward into the will. It is only in so far as they reach the will and are there embodied in habits that the virtues are really fatal to us. I don't, of course, mean that the patient's mistakes for his will, the consciousness fume and fret of resolutions and clenched teeth, but the real center that the enemy calls his heart. All sorts of virtues painted in the fantasy are approved by the intellect, or even in some measure loved and admired, will not keep the man from our Father's house. Indeed, they may make him more amusingly when he gets there. Your affectionate uncle, Screwtape.